Welcome to the Strangers on the Way podcast. I'm so excited to have today's guest, Lynne Marian, with us. I met Lynn, actually, it was pretty wild. I won a conference ticket for free on Instagram to this conference that was here in Chicagoland and met Lynn, who was serving at the conference as one of the vendors with a project she helps lead called Tend. And we just instantly connected. And so I'm so excited to have Lynn, you on the podcast. A California girl, so fun.
Yeah.
But welcome. Excited to hear more about you and just some of your passions. And um, yeah, I'd love to just start off by hearing a little bit more about who you are. If you could share that with our listeners.
All right. Well, thanks, Lauren. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. And it's just so fun, the conversations that we've already had. And so, yeah, as you say, I'm a Southern California girl, born and raised. I did not grow up in a Christian home, a family of faith. I was raised by a single mother. But when I was in high school, a friend of mine took me to youth group, and over the course of time, I did become a Christian. And a few years later, went off to Bible college. So I went from not having that background at all to being, immersed in it. And of course, what happens when you go to Bible college, right? You meet somebody who's going to become a pastor. And, I had this desire in my heart to serve the Lord. I had been working in like youth ministry and children's ministry all through college. And then it was like, oh, of course, God's preparing me to be a pastor's wife
Mm.
because I was in a brand of Christianity where that was pretty much the role that a woman in ministry was going to have, and so that was the road I went. So I ended up getting married, and it was, we had a wonderful season of service and ministry, lots and lots of youth ministry, some significant churches here in Southern California. But, as happens in many marriages, things did not work out the way we had planned. And after 20 years, my pastor husband left and left me a single mom with three kids. And, having become a Christian at such a young age, I mean, at such a not young age, at an older age, not too far before I met my pastor husband, there was a lot of entanglement between God, husband, pastor, church, and my role in all of that, So there really was, I don't want to call it a crisis of faith, but definitely um, a moment of kind of deconstructing what faith was to me, what my relationship to God was outside of the context of being a pastor's wife, being, in that role. And of course, still wanting to raise my kids in the church and teach them to love God. But there was definitely kind of a crisis of faith there that I've been sort of reconstructing ever since. So, that's kind of a little bit about my personal background. So,
Mhm. It's
oh, you
amazing.
wanna,
Yeah.
that's good
No,
right there.
incredible. Um, well, it's really neat. We were also talking about how your professional life has kind of journeyed through and developing your faith as well. So, could you share a bit about your work with Plant with Purpose?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'll maybe take it back a little bit
Yeah.
further. So one of the things that happened as being a professional Christian, as a pastor's wife, is that I ended up working, and I was in marketing and communications, and I had worked for different, secular mainstream organizations, but I ended up working with Christian organizations quite a bit in churches. And so I ended up going to work for an organization called Outreach when it was very, very young, and became their first director of marketing, first VP of marketing and communications. And it is an organization that provides communication resources to Christian churches across the country. And one of the things that I did while I was there was that I started a national magazine called Outreach, and you might have heard of it. It's still published today, and it's for pastors and church leaders. And we just really told the stories of what churches were doing to be really effective in connecting people to the Lord, what they were doing in creative ways, and the issues that they were facing. And that was really a great thing. It was really fun for me. And it was also what really immersed me in Christian ministry and in knowing churches and talking to churches and being involved with different development organizations. And we had partnered with organizations there like Zondervan and World Vision. And after I left outreach, I ended up becoming a consultant and I worked for those organizations. As a matter of fact, I went to work for World Vision for several years, and then I went to work for World Concern and a lot of other different nonprofits. And so 6 years ago, I heard about this position that was open at Plant with Purpose. And I had never heard of Plant with Purpose, but I feel like I was, crafted for this role because it was about, it was about the development work that I had done. It was about connecting with the Christians, Christian leaders. And so it just was a really great fit for me to come in. Now, I'll tell you about Plant with Purpose. Plant with Purpose is an incredible organization, and I say that having worked for some other really incredible organizations and ministries, but I've never worked for an organization that had a healthier culture, a more holistic ministry with documented impact that is very measurable. I mean, we have a model that is literally lifting communities out of poverty in like 2 years, and not just like on a one-off basis, like in a sustainable way. And it's incredible work. And what we do is we work at the intersection of poverty, extreme rural poverty in some of the world's most difficult places. We work in Africa, we work in the Caribbean, we work in Southeast Asia. So we're working with people who are really struggling, but we work right there at that extreme rural poverty and environmental degradation along with spiritual renewal. So it's that intersection that's the secret sauce. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. And, I've learned a lot of things working at Plant with Purpose. And one of them is that you can't say you love people who are suffering and not care about the environment because poverty, extreme rural poverty, and environmental damage are causes and effects of one another. And that was a light bulb moment for me because I always believed as a Christian you should care for the poor. But, I understand, especially today, there isn't a, not every Christian thinks that they should embrace the environment. There's a lot of people who think, oh, well, it's all going to burn. God doesn't care about the planet. But I really don't believe that's true. I mean, if you care about people who are suffering and who are living in poverty, it is because of the environmental damage that they are suffering. So the reason Plant with Purpose is successful is because we address both those root causes together. And then with the spiritual renewal part, we are working with individual people and churches, 1,500 plus churches around the world. And what we have really discovered is that when people understand their roles as caretakers of creation, it gives them innate value. It gives them purpose. They believe, they come to understand God was the first gardener. God was the first farmer. God gave us a job to participate with him. And when the earth is healthy, we are healthy. We thrive too. So anyway, that's the work of Plant with Purpose. And it's just been a great part of my journey to be here. So,
That's
yeah,
Could you share like a story or two of just what you've seen impact wise?
at Plant with Purpose.
Yeah, globally. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I always come back to this one story because it's a story that I had read about, like coming in from the field before I went. But there's a woman named Francine, and she lives in Burundi. And she was 18 years old, and she was living uh, near an area where her family basically fished for a living. And somehow she ended up married off to a guy who lived up in this mountain community. It was a farming family and she got up there, and they were so poor that they had to sleep on the floor of her in-laws' kitchen, like their little cooking hut. That's where they had to sleep every night. She was mocked and put down by her in-laws. She didn't know anything about farming. She didn't know anything because she came from fishing, right? And so she was so miserable and unhappy and so abused in the family. She tried to run away, and they went back and they found her and they brought her back, and she was just struggling. And then she got pregnant and was having kids, and just they were just absolutely in utter despair. Well, we came in with our program, which has these purpose groups. We call them purpose groups, which are community savings and loan groups. And we also teach through farmer field schools, regenerative organic agriculture and tree planting. Okay. We will plant our 100 millionth tree in the next year at Plant with Purpose. So we know that environmental restoration is a huge part of lifting these communities out of poverty. Well, this woman, Francine, she came in, she got so fired up, she started working on her little plot of land that they did. It did so well. She took out a loan from her savings group, bought another plot of land, was farming like crazy, but really had a vision to go into business as an entrepreneur. So then she took out another loan. She opened up a bakery in town. And when I say a bakery, it's more like, think of like a Starbucks, like where people go in the morning. And then she made these bread rolls and then served tea, and people would come in. It was like breakfast, you know? So they would come in, and everyone loved her bread that she had and her tea. And it was so successful that she rented the space next door to the bakery and put in a cafe where she now served lunch. Well, as a result of all this, not only did she start employing 4 people to work on her farm, she employed somebody to work in her bakery. She hired 2 women to work in her restaurant. She was renting 2 commercial spaces, plots of land, and her husband went into the main city and opened up a store. So she went from being this poor person who didn't even have enough to eat to suddenly employing 9 people, renting 3 commercial spaces. And not only was she transforming the life of herself, but she was transforming the entire community. She became a village agent for Plant with Purpose. And that means she was like a promoter helping to get other people into groups to help transform their lives. And what she said to me that I loved is not only was she excited about all of the success she's had, but she said, what I'm most proud of is that 45 other people have changed their lives now because I got them connected to the work.
Wow.
So
Oh,
she's my idol. She's,
yeah. Yeah.
and I met her when I was in Burundi. That was just an honor. I felt like I was talking to a celebrity. She was
Yeah.
great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Just impact in her own family, but then also the community and the families. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that so much. Well, I know that's kind of global work, and you've kind of helped initiate a new project called Tend that's a little
Yeah.
more focused on the States. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, since the very beginning of Plant with Purpose 40 years ago, we always believed we were called to serve churches in the US. But the model, the work we do, the international work we do, isn't really applicable like exactly here in the US because it's really designed for the developing countries where we work. So we've always said we want to serve the US church, we want to come alongside them. But what is that going to look like? And of course, in a nonprofit, you've only got limited bandwidth, limited time, limited money, right? So a year and a half ago, or a couple of years ago, I heard about a Lilly grant, the Lilly Endowment Thriving Congregations grant. And we had a vision for a program to bring the same learnings that we had gotten from the field, from individuals and churches who had been transformed by reconnecting to creation and their role in creation. We wanted to bring that to U.S. churches. So we had this idea, we wrote a grant, and we got this Lilly grant, $1.25 million. We were blown away. I'd never gotten a grant in my life. And so we have been able to start this program that is designed to Tend is a 10-week small group program designed for outreach and discipleship, but rooted in creation care. We're very, we see the landscape of the church in America right now. And it's just a shame that the polarization of right and left has impacted the church in such a sad way. Because what it said is like, okay, I've got to toe this party line over here, and environmentalism is kind of a thing of the left. And so if I'm a conservative Christian, does that mean I can't really do creation care? But wait a minute. That's not a left thing. That's a Genesis thing, right? I mean, we were called from the very beginning to be part of creation, and so Tend is an amazing program that has enabled us to bring creation care back into churches in this winsome way that connects to things churches already have, small groups, right? Discipleship, evangelism, like the things that they do, and given them this great tool that we're making available 100% free. Thank you, Lily Endowment, to any church across America. And it actually just launched in January. So we are really excited, and we're seeing churches every day sign up and download the curriculum. And we're really looking forward to seeing what 10 does in churches across the country.
It's so exciting. Have you had any early, I know it's still early, but any early stories from churches in the States that have connected
Yeah.
with the program?
Yeah, I mean, we really have only seen our beta churches, but it's been really fun to see churches. It was a great church, Light and Life in Long Beach, and they had long had a community garden that had just gone fallow, and their goal, their vision was to see this garden, raise vegetables and that they could donate to community food banks to be able to distribute to people in need in the community. But, they were trying, oh, can you volunteer to be in work in the garden? And they couldn't get volunteers, but they did a Tend group. And so what they did was take a small group discipleship program and connect it to the work of that community garden, because Tend is every other week is Bible discovery and every other week is hands-on earth care activity. And so when you can bring those two things together, you don't have to do discipleship at church and then a service project, but you actually turn that service project into discipleship group, into a small group opportunity. And you can invite your neighbors to come be part of it because, you know, this is the thing, Lauren, you know, and this kind of connects back to my own journey, but we we are creation. We were created at the same time as everything else was created. And we don't, when we see creation, it's not something out there. And that's the reason why when we walk through a forest, when we stand at the ocean, when we look at a sunset, it moves us. It connects to our soul, and it connects us to God. And you know what? It's not just Christians that it does that for. It does that for everybody. You don't have to be a Christian to be moved by a sunset or standing at the beach watching the waves roll in. I mean, that is how we're made. One of the things we've really learned, that I've learned from Tend, is that, in Genesis, when we were created, God formed us from the soil, right? He took humans and he formed us, it says, from the soil. And at the end of the 6 days of creation in Genesis 1:31, it says that God looked at all that he created and said it was very good, right? But it wasn't that God said, "Oh, I checked everything off the list. Oceans, check. Stars, check. Earth, check. Animals, check. Plants, check." It wasn't that he got done with the list and he was done and he was like, very good. No, it was that he was crafting a whole, an entire ecosystem. And humans are part of that. Humans were part of that. And it wasn't very good until humans were in the mix. And that has just been a profound learning for me. And I have to say, understanding that I am creation and that I have an identity as creation, not only has that helped reframe my faith journey from where it was after coming out of being a pastor's wife and wrestling with conservative Christianity and everything there, but really coming to understand I was crafted with a purpose. I was crafted to be part of creation, and that identity has changed the way I see everything. It changes the way I read scripture. It changes the way I act to my neighbor. It changes the way I shop at the grocery store. It changes the way I don't go to the mall so much, and all of those things. It's really been transformational for me personally, and my prayer for people involved with Tend is that they will experience that too. They will rediscover their identity as creation and it will reframe their relationship with God.
Oh, I
So,
love that so much. It's really, I think, innovative, um, yeah, to like at least the American church, where we've done a lot inside, even like, yeah, that's really remarkable. What are some of your personal favorite like forms of creation care?
mm. Well, I mean, I think the best thing about creation care is that you don't have it doesn't have to be something that you do. It just is something that you are. I mean, I
Mhm.
feel like when I walk down to the lake and go out on a kayak, I'm communing with God in that moment while you're out on the water. I mean, I think everyone feels that. When I raise tomatoes in my backyard, when I compost instead of throwing stuff in the trash, all of those things are creation care. And just like in Acts 1:8, where it says, that we're supposed to be a witness in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth, I think of it that way too. I need to live my identity as creation in my home, and then in my community, and then in the country, and then to the uttermost parts of the earth. And so for me, I can, I can compost at home and shop less and upcycle instead of throw away in my home. And I can also plant trees globally to help Francine, to help her in her community, and all those concentric circles. To me, that's what it is to live creation care, is just really to embody it and to let it express itself in all the ways we show up in the world.
I love that so much. Like, it's more integrated. Like, I
Mm,
think sometimes we'll like be like, yeah, I'm gonna, like you said, go do the service project or like do the thing, but actually making it like part of your lifestyle. And then I
yeah.
love that picture of from what our home, and then oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, because like with Tend, it isn't that you go out every other week and do a different creation care project. You do the same project. So
Mhm.
whether you're creating pine cone bird feeders to go hang in natural areas. We were talking earlier about liking birds, right?
Yeah.
So that's what a project that I did with a church in down here in San Diego was making, you go one day and you go collect a bunch of pine cones. And
Mhm.
then next time you come back together, you take those and you smear them with nut butter and roll them in seeds and put a string on them. And then, the next time you get together, you go out and you go hang them in the trees in the neighborhood or in the forest during the winter to make sure the birds have food to eat. It's the same project. So that way, instead of just saying, oh, well, we went and worked at a food pantry this week, check, done, I'll do it again next year. It becomes a lifestyle
Mhm.
of getting out into nature with people, right? That's another beautiful thing about Tend is that it's about reconnecting people to one another and to the church. So I mean, I think after post-COVID, right, we're all still recovering. Churches are still recovering. We need to regather, but we don't need to regather inside for a service. We need to do life together. And part of that is doing life as creation together, you
Mhm.
know. So,
And I love that you can invite your neighbors in, and it's like really beautiful. Like we're out in the community
hmm.
together. That's
Yeah, because if you're going to go clean up, oh, we're going to go pick up trash down at the river, your neighbors care about that river too.
yes.
That impacts them just as much as it impacts people at church. You're not saying, here, come pull weeds at the church. No, you're not asking them to do that. Let's go do something we all care about. Let's do something. Yeah, there was a fire and now we're going to go help the local forestry service replant trees in this burn area. Let's go do that together every other week for a month or two.
Mhm.
Let's get into a habit. Let's make it part of our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Oh,
doing life with our neighbors.
I
That's
love
great.
that so much. So good. So looking back on your life so far and your journey and what you faced and kind of it's amazing like the variety of organizations you've worked for and then plant with purpose. What have you learned like about yourself?
Mm, mm. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the things that I've shared really are there. I mean, I've had these light bulb moments about, like I said, living and finding my identity as creation, about understanding the connection between poverty and the environment and those things. But what I have also really learned is that God is with us in the moments, but He's also there in the master plan, and that it's so easy for us to look at individual things that happen to us and go, "Oh my gosh, that was horrible," that was a really devastating thing, and we push against it and we fight against it, and God is just saying, "I see the whole arc of your life. I
Mhm.
see everything from beginning to end." And I'm going to redeem all of those things that you thought were terrible, but I redeemed that and pushed you in this direction. And look what you're doing now. And look who you met. And look at what you've been able to accomplish and how those things have changed the way you think about your relationship with me. God is, I always say when we go global in like our thinking about missional impact and things like that and participating in the kingdom, that's when we're closest to God because He's so much bigger than
Mm.
our little mind. We look like this at our lives with just looking at these very small little sections of our life. And He's like, step back. I'm way out here. I
Mhm.
see the whole thing. I'm not bound by time. I'm not bound by place. I'm at work in all of it. And that's to me the beautiful thing I think that I've seen is just the way God is redeeming every aspect of our life, all the things that we have experienced to bring us to where we are. And when we join Him in His global kingdom mission, and part of that is our role as creation, um, that's really when we grow as disciples. That's what He wants us to do.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Lynn, thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy.
Uh,
If people are kind of feeling that tug of like, oh, I want to, yeah, like participate in some way, how can they get connected to Tend and or Plant with Purpose if they're more
yeah,
global? And
yeah, absolutely.
any like anything you'd say that they could do this week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say this week, just get outside and talk to God and remember that you are creation.
Mm.
Embrace that identity and think about what that means for you spiritually, if you are embracing your identity as creation. But if you are interested in getting involved with the global work of Plant with Purpose, if you want to plant a tree for $1, you can go to plantwithpurpose.org, plantwithpurpose.org, and we've got all kinds of great information and great stories about the people that we work with, like Francine, that you could read about on the website. And if you are interested in joining, being part of Tend and bringing 10 to your church for free, we're going to be starting a cohort this spring. That you could do Tend at any time, but we do have a cohort of people who are going to be walking through Tend this spring. And go to tendlife.org. And you can download all the materials for free. You can set up a call to talk to Brendan, who will help you get started with your group, or whatever you need. But tendlife.org is where you go for that.
Beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes as well.
All
Oh,
right.
thank you so much for sharing your heart with us and thank you for the work that you're doing globally. It's really remarkable and yeah, I'm just like so moved by you and just the impact. So I'm sure our listeners are too.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Lauren. It was such a joy to meet you and so fun to just continue this conversation.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.